No, thank you, Danny. It's really good to see you both joining together. So we've invited ECTs and mentors to join together. It's fantastic to see both of you in the same room, ready to work together. And that's the aim of the session. So as Danny has done, if you can include both names, that's really helpful. And it's good to see Afroja's done the same on her screen as well. So we should have 2 names and 1 school, hopefully, on your details. I can see Samantha and Antoine have done that as well. And Shafa and Salwa, welcome. It's great to see you this afternoon. Okay. As we're settling in and getting some of that sorted, some of those technical issues sorted, I'm just going to ask Ruth to formally welcome us this afternoon and start the session off. Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks, Tessa. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all here. In the second year of the Early Career Framework, I'm just going to take a few moments just to talk a little bit about East London Teaching School Hub, because we're a year on, and sometimes around the Early Career Framework, it can be a bit confusing whose role it is to do what. And so I'm just going to take a few moments to kind of go over that, really. So first of all, I'm Ruth Smith, Director of East London Teaching School Hub, and we're based at Mulberry School for Girls in Tower Hamlets. On the screen is our strapline, if you like. So I'm going to give you a moment to just read that, and then I'll say a bit more. So East London Teaching School Hub is one of 87 teaching school hubs that were designated just over a year ago by the Department for Education. And all teaching school hubs have their own defined geographical patch. Ours is Hackney and Tower Hamlets, although we're pleased to welcome colleagues from other boroughs nearby working with us. And our main role is to make sure that all schools in our patch, if you like, get access to the Early Career Framework, which is a statutory entitlement now for early career teachers and their mentors too, to a fully funded programme. We work with UCL to deliver that, and we'll say a bit more of that later. But we also have a responsibility for early career teaching all the way through to national professional qualifications. So East London Teaching School Hub, that strapline, that's what we're here for. We're here to make sure that teachers get the best quality teacher development, because it's teachers that make the greatest difference. And we really do believe if we have high quality evidence-informed CPD, that we change lives, all lives. The 3 underpinning principles of how we work are here on the screen. So we believe really strongly in collegiality. East London Teaching School Hub is based at Mulberry School for Girls, but we work with a huge range of facilitators, schools and experts across our patch, and our job is to bring together and connect the expertise so that you all benefit from it and contribute to that as well. We're inclusive in our approach. We really do want every single child in every single school to get the best possible outcome, and we want to make sure that all teachers and leaders across our patch can access and be part of that network of high quality professional learning. And we're really transparent about how we work as well. Over a year ago, it was all a bit of a murky picture how teaching school hubs would work, how the Early Career Framework would work, how all this massive raft of national policy reform would happen. And we really try our best to communicate and get out messages as quickly as we can around how things are working and trying to help you access material as well. The caveat there is teaching school hubs often don't know any more than anybody else, but we do work really hard, like I said, to try and get the information that's needed and get it out to you all so that we can all access the best quality education together, professional development education together. And so the word hub really is critical to this. We're really lucky to have an area that we work in that has such high expectations about professional learning, our own professional practice, and what we can expect from all of our students. We have high aspirations, and we really do tap into all of the expertise out there. So across the Teaching School Hub, we do have over 20, probably nearing over 30 now, school leader facilitators working with us. We have 130 of 176 schools in our patch on professional development programs with us. And the scale now of the Early Career Framework is huge. We've got nearly 1,000 early career teachers and mentors working together on our programmes. So please do make the most of these opportunities to come together and learn together, because we really hope that what you will get from this is knowledge exchange and sharing of good practice with people outside your own school setting, because we appreciate that although we serve East London together, each school has its own specific context. So in terms of communications, it's all a bit complicated sometimes. There's lots of different people involved in the delivery of the early career framework. So to begin with then, the first line of communication is between you together. So you, early career teacher and mentor, coming together, sharing expertise, sharing your understanding, problem solving using UCL Extend, how to navigate the early career framework. Next is your induction tutor. You should know by now who in your school is your induction tutor. They are responsible for the appropriate body services. They're responsible for induction, as it says in their title. They're also responsible for making sure that everybody is logged on properly to the Department for Education portal, which in turn makes sure you're accurately logged on to UCL Extend. The next port of call is UCL itself. So UCL is our lead provider. They've been designated by the government to put this national programme together, and we work very closely with them as a delivery partner. We take their national material and adapt it for the local context. Just a word there. We had to make a decision over a year ago which lead provider we would work with, and we chose UCL because of its expertise and excellence in research and education. They are global leaders in it and have been for a number of years. And I just wanted to remind you that you will have received email communication or notifications from UCL directly about a piece of research they're doing at the moment. Not only do they deliver and provide high quality professional development, but they're constantly engaging in research into efficacy. So there's been a call out to everybody to respond to a survey they've put out. Please do complete that if you haven't already, because you can be part of a really important, significant piece of research into the efficacy of early career framework development. And then lastly, it's us. So we sit, East London Teaching School Hub sits kind of as an umbrella across all of the different partnerships that we work with. We work directly with secondary early career teachers and mentors, and we have a collection of local partners who deliver our primary partnership work for us too. And again, drawing on the expertise across the region. So that's a little bit about us and how we all fit together. And I hope the rest of your learning today goes well. It's great to see you all again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. I think that was a really helpful introduction into our partnership model and the different roles that we have across the hub and in partnership with UCL and all those range of schools across Tower Hamlets and Hackney. So we're going to move on during this session to look at the Year 2 programme. All of you have engaged with the Year 1 programme as ECTs, and many mentors you were engaged as well last year on the programme, although we are aware there are some new mentors working with Year 2 ECTs as well. So we're going to review where you're up to on the programme, consolidate that understanding around practitioner inquiry, which is the key model for professional learning in Year 2, including constructing that first inquiry question together. If there are questions you have that you're hoping to be addressed as part of this session, please do write them in the chat, and then we'll be able to pick them up later on, or perhaps in our follow-up conversations, because we'll have events coming up over the next few weeks together as well. So a word about cohorts. We are now in cohort 2 of the programme, and Ruth talked about how we're working now with nearly 1,000 ECTs and mentors. Cohort 1, which is most of the ECTs in the room today, you started your induction last year and you're moving into Year 2 of the programme. Cohort 2 are joining us this year. Now, mentors who are joining us this year who weren't involved with the programme last year, you'll be described as Cohort 2 mentors. And so you'll be working on the Year 1 mentor development programme, because the mentor development programme is a 2-year programme alongside but separate from the ECT programme that is a 2-year one. So you may find yourself working out of sync with your ECT. You may be working with a Year 2 ECT, and that's why you're here today. So just to reiterate, you may be a mentor cohort 2, so doing the Year 1 of the mentor development programme, You'll be starting module 1 of the mentor development program, but you may be working with an ECT who started last year, who's now engaging in year 2 of the program or module 6. And these out of sync sort of strange situations, as they may seem, can be very confusing. And I know they have led to some confusions at the start of this term, but we are planning for you, and you will be sort of included and supported through that process. So what does the mentor development program look like in year 2? So this is reminding you, aimed at those mentors who were involved with us last year. So you're entering your 2nd year of your program. Well, I've got up a picture of cake there, and that's because we're really looking forward to welcoming you into year 2 with our conference later on this week. So we've got conferences for all our year 2 mentors who are working with us on Wednesday and Friday this week. Those are at the Tomlinson Centre in Hackney and the PDC Centre on Bethnal Green Road. And that will include the self-study from this half term and your online learning community for this half term, and welcome you into the year. So it's really about getting all the key activities for this half term undertaken in one session together. That session starts at 1:30, and as I mentioned, there's cake. The rest of the year, your programme looks very similar to last year. So you've got online learning communities each term, so in spring 1, and at the end of the summer as well, these online learning communities, 1-hour twilights online together. Just as last year, you'll have your self-study each half term, and that's always in your first week folder on UCL Extend for each half term. Last year, you'll remember we offered mentor drop-ins, and we're going to be offering a similar activity this year. We're going to be offering online collaborative self-study sessions in the half terms where we don't meet you for your online learning communities. So the first one of those is going to be just after half term, and that's really focused around supporting you through the ECT programme, looking at the module summary guide, thinking about what your actions are and your practices as a mentor in relation to the ECT content. So those are optional, online, collaborative opportunities to engage with. The part 2 of the self-study, which you'll be familiar with by now, is really around, familiarising yourself with the programme. Okay. ECTs, your programme looks slightly different this year. Hopefully you've picked up that the online learning communities have gone this year, and you just have one in-person session per half term for the first 4 half terms. And then you'll be able to engage in school visits that are linked to your inquiry processes in the summer term. So it's there's less intensive in terms of facilitated sessions, and we're really hoping that we'll be able to meet you in person for each of those sessions, which I know that everyone really enjoyed last term. We're seeing you very shortly in a couple of weeks' time. So we'll be meeting you in 2 separate events, our science, maths, computing, expressive arts and technology ECTs will be working with us on Wednesday the 12th, and other ECTs working with us on Friday. So let's just recap. We've kind of outlined, and all of you should have received those session schedules in your welcome emails. But if you can't attend a session, we're aware things get in the way, parents' evenings, illness perhaps. Just some reminders really on the etiquette of how to support full engagement and manage that. If you know in advance that you can't attend a session, it'd be really helpful if you can contact us, because then we can offer you an alternative. For example, this week we've got mentor conferences on Wednesday and Friday. Our online learning communities will be on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. So you'll have 3 options there. And our ECT sessions again will be Wednesday and Friday. So there's always 2 options within a week for you to attend. If you do miss a session, we will email you to advise you on an alternative session or how you can catch up. Okay, and we really hope that you will take responsibility for that. We'll also contact your mentor, or if you are a mentor, your induction tutor, if we have concerns about your progress. So if you're not attending regularly, or you're choosing not to catch up on the missed materials that we've directed you to, we will follow that up. And that's because the programme is a funded one. The schools receive funding for your engagement in the programme, and also obviously we need to pay for our facilitator time. But most importantly, because we believe the programme won't have an impact unless you're engaging fully with the programme. So we really want to see you in our sessions, and we're thinking about ways we can support you to attend flexibly. I've mentioned that the year 2 of the programme is focused on practitioner inquiry. So I'm going to ask Anissa just to launch our poll, because I want to see how many of you have got your head around the practitioner inquiry cycle already. I hope you've had a chance, as advised, to look through the year 2 handbook, which outlines the practitioner inquiry. I hope you've had a chance to look at the asynchronous materials we shared with you in the summer term. What are the 4 stages of the practitioner inquiry? And which is the first step? Let's take a couple of minutes to remind ourselves and recall that knowledge. Okay, we've got about 25% of the group have now responded, so we'll just spend about 20 more seconds on this. Okay, and we've got about half of the responses now. So Anissa, could you share the poll with us, and let's have a look at some of those responses. Okay, so hopefully you can see that in front of you now. We can see that there's a real range in the different responses people have. Actually, that lots of people, everybody did choose, every single one of those stages was chosen, so all of those things. And I think that's because practitioner inquiry cycles are overlapping, aren't they, with action research cycles, or with, you know, a do, act, reflect cycle. There are lots of different iterative models there for professional learning and development. And the language isn't the important thing. The important part, of course, is the fact that we're iteratively reflecting on our development and practices in the classroom. But there are some very sensible kind of steps you can take for those. So let's have a look at that second question. Which element comes first? And we can see there that we are asking, exploring, preparing, reflecting, and investigating. And of course, the answer from UCL Extend, the model they've adapted and that we'll be working with this year, so to help us to have this shared language, is a model of ask first, then investigate, then innovate. That's the sort of taking action and experimenting, and then reflecting on it. Now, this is an ongoing spiral, and of course you could start at any stage, but we will be starting with the ask part of the cycle. And the way we'll engage with this through the year is by having 2 short exploratory inquiries through modules 6 and 7, where we will ask and then investigate in kind of quite short, simple ways. And then only in module 8, which is a very long module, 16 weeks, right through to the summer term, will we engage in that full cycle of practitioner inquiry, where we ask, investigate, innovate on our practice, and then reflect. So one key message I want to share with you this afternoon is that the process of learning how to inquire through this practitioner inquiry is one that you'll be supported in. It's one that is iterative, and it's one that will be developing over the year. So there's no expectation that you start in this half term, you know, being fully fledged practitioner inquiries. There's no expectation even by the end of the year that you're doing sort of master's level or PhD research. These is about professional practice and inquiry, and it will be supported all the way through. You will have engaged with these materials last year, but I cannot ever miss an opportunity to remind people about the resources that are available on UCL Extend. So it's often, I think, very tempting to go straight into the kind of week by week materials, but actually looking back at some of the guidance in the module guidance area is really helpful. So the module summary guide The module audit and the module trackers, I think, are really helpful for giving you that sense of the big picture. And that will help you to keep a track of where you're trying to go within the medium term. So where should you be up to? Let's take a moment to think about where you are and where you should be. So before you came today, we asked that you explored UCL Extend, including the Year 2 handbook. And I'll just sort of remind you that is a really helpful resource that's available all the way through for the key materials for this programme. We also asked you to watch an asynchronous video. So that was an hour's recording provided by UCL, and that gives, again, a really good introduction to the full year. So please take a moment to do that if you haven't already. We sent the link out to that in your welcome emails and invites. Last week, we hoped you had the first of your mentor meetings, and the focus of that was your module audit. So you'll remember from last year that each module offers an opportunity to review the strengths and areas of development for the ECT. And we hope this is a really important activity in order to think about, what does my ECT particularly need at this moment? How do I stretch them? How do I support them in relation to the particular areas that they need support on or stretch on? You'll notice there that I've crossed out the mentor self-study, and that's because although that was in your folder last week, I hope you are aware that that will be included in the mentor conference. So there's no need to engage with that separately or in advance, because we'll be covering it in our events this week. And today, here we are in our welcome conference. Okay, and we're going to focus now in on this question about the exploratory research question that's going to drive your actions for the rest of this half term. This resource came from the Year 2 handbook that I've mentioned. It's also available in the videos, which offer really helpful guidance. Again, they're accessible at all points on the practitioner inquiry. And what they suggest is that in deciding a focus for the ECT, it should be something that's meaningful for the ECT. So something perhaps that's coming out of their module audit, something that's meaningful in terms of the learners they're working with, so the students, and something perhaps that's also ties in with the whole school priorities and the mentors. You may be able to support them in thinking about this sweet spot in the middle. Okay. What I'd like you to do is to spend 5 minutes now with your partner and just review, if you have had a chance to look at your module audit, what was coming out of that might be a focus for your ECT's first inquiry. If you haven't had a chance to look at the module audit yet, what might be a meaningful focus for your ECT's inquiry focused around module 1 and module 7, teacher standards 1 and 7, so around behaviour, expectations. Those are the modules you focused on last half term. So let's spend 5 minutes now up to 4:32. I'm going to ask you to turn your cameras off and have 5 minutes conversation thinking about your focus. Criteria. So key criteria there to help you think about whether the focus you've identified is an appropriate one. So does it feel meaningful to your ECT? Is it something that's going to sustain them genuinely through the next 4 weeks of investigation? Is it something they care about in terms of the difference that it will make to their learners? We know that teachers are primarily motivated by the impact they see on their learners. Is that going to be something that's relevant to their learners in a way that they can see the difference? Will they be able to measure it or start to get some indicators that they're making a difference? Is it tied to an area of school development? And is it tied to module 1 that you did all the way back in September 2021, teacher standards 1 and 7? Could I have a couple of people just writing their examples of their questions, their areas of focus into the chat, please? So let's have a few examples in the chat and see where we're thinking our focus will be. Thank you, Jack and Charlie. So we've got questions there about expectations. So setting goals, thinking about whether the goals you set are challenging. Sorry, going back one slide. We've got the question there around behaviour, around thinking about particular groups of learners, such as nurture groups in year 11, thinking about particular classes and how we might work with parents, thinking about motivation, praise, effort, intentional and consistent language. So that's directly from the ECF. It's really nice to see people drawing back on the ECF language. Thinking about sanctions, thinking about motivation, thinking about stretching learners, so thinking about challenge, thinking about positive reinforcement with different groups and which groups are most affected. Okay, thank you very much for sharing those examples. What we're going to do now is to move into thinking about how we might narrow this even further into our first exploratory question. So UCL have advised that a good exploratory inquiry question will use words or terms that other people understand. So we haven't got any kind of jargon in there or school-specific terminology. It'll start to indicate the kind of data, the kind of evidence that you might use to answer your question. And it's realistic. So we've only now got 4 weeks until half term, believe it or not. Is it something that you can realistically start to explore and investigate within the next few weeks? And we're going to take what's described as a post-it note method in a moment to craft some questions. But let's have a look at some examples first. So here's an example from the handbook. And I can see some echoes there with some of your chat comments there around that idea of stretch and challenge, the idea of sanctions and rewards. What's interesting about these questions is we've got, what do pupils say? And you start to see straight away, don't you, that this is going to be about asking pupils' perspectives. You start to see the indication of what the data might be. And this again ties in nicely with some of our colleagues' questions about motivation, intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, positive reinforcement there as well. Okay. So these are the types of questions we're looking for. So let's work towards this, and we're going to use the post-it note method. It doesn't matter if you haven't got post-it notes with you, a scrap of paper at the desk and a whiteboard pen will be just as good. I'm going to ask you to write down 3 questions, 1 per post-it note or 1 per space. Don't worry too much about them, just let them out. Don't think about it too hard. And then once you've done that, I'm going to ask you to, with your mentor, start to circle and underline the key words. What are the key concepts and ideas coming up in these questions? Tricky bit, can you try and combine those ideas, those words, those key concepts into a question that is going to drive your inquiry? But here's the catch, can you do it without using the word and? Because what we found is that when people use an and to combine things, it probably means they're asking 2 questions. Okay, so we want a narrow focus, something that's achievable within the next few weeks that combines your key ideas. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes now with your partner. Again, I'll ask you to turn your cameras off and we'll have 10 minutes of partner time, working our way through this post-it note method and trying to identify our first exploratory inquiry question for the module. So let's join back at 4:47 in 10 minutes time. I'm here if you have any questions in the meantime. Inquiry questions back into the chat, and I'm just giving some individual feedback to those ones that come in straight away, and then we'll look at them together in a minute or so. Okay, let's take a few moments then as we come back to read through some of those questions. And as I'm reading them through, I'm thinking about those success criteria we shared around the inquiry questions. So are the terms, are the words used well defined? Can we all understand them? Can we see some indications about the type of data, the type of evidence they may use to answer the question? Is it realistic? Can they start to answer these questions within the next few weeks? So I really like the way Joe Martin and Manuela at Swan Lee have thought about a particular group of learners. So identifying that perhaps SEND learners previously, I don't know the backstory, but thinking about disadvantage and inclusion, perhaps that's a group that would warrant a particular attention. And thinking now about the expectations and the challenge. Zoe there's got a question about how do teachers use particular forms of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So I'm interested, Zoe, in whether that's going to be about your use of it, remembering this is an inquiry focused on your own professional development. So is it about how do I use intrinsic and extrinsic motivation? And thinking there about, are you going to be asking other people to observe you, or who will you get that feedback from? Kimberly's thinking about praise in terms of girls' engagement in PE. So she's got a particular focus there around praise. She's got a particular group of learners there in terms of girls. And I'm interested to think about how will she know what she's looking for? So what type of evidence of engagement might she be looking for? Is she going to be asking the students about their levels of engagement? Will observers be feeding back to her? Will it be her own reflections based on her own practice? Okay, so Bethany there's got a question about, do pupils feel? And there straight away we can start to see that she's going to be asking the students for their perspective. What do pupils say? Amy's asking, what do people say about their intrinsic motivation? Okay, so take a moment, please, as you're doing this now, to think about the types of data you might be drawing on. Okay, we will be developing our sort of data skills, our use of evidence through the programme, but it is worth at this point just starting to think about the types of data that are already available in schools. So researchers describe this as naturally occurring data. Schools are rich in all sorts of data, aren't they? You know, your books are full of student progress, student work, hopefully. You know, you talk to students regularly. When we talk about doing student surveys, it might not be a kind of formal questionnaire that's done, but it might be, you know, a quick thumbs up, thumbs down activity, or it might be a show me board activity, or it could be a little sample group that you talk to in the playground or in the corridor. Okay, you might ask your teaching assistants, for example, to talk to particular groups of learners and give them that focus. So thinking about the types of data you already collect as part of formative assessment, as part of your behaviour management processes, collecting behaviour points or DMARCs, sanction points, perhaps on a school system. Those are all the types of data that you may be able to refer to and draw on through this process. So where's this going to go next? Well, in a couple of weeks' time, you'll go to your mentor meeting and you're asked to bring an evidence statement. And the word there is simple evidence statement of how this is going for you in terms of your normal practice. And I just want to share some examples with you so that you're clear about what that looks like. So here's an example again from the handbook. What we can see in there is some indications that you've been investigating it by looking at some evidence there. So there's this talk of a pupil survey. And again, it might not be a kind of formal questionnaire. It could be a one question exit ticket, for example, at the end of a lesson, or it could be a quick starter activity at the start of the lesson. We've got there the voice of a lower attaining student. Was that a corridor conversation, a playground conversation, or did the teacher plan in time to be able to talk to particular learners within their group? And then looking at the student data there as well, bringing all of that together to think about what's going on in relation to my area of inquiry. So this should be based on evidence and focused on those areas of teacher standards 1 and 7. In week 7, you'll then report back on this even further. And just want to emphasize that this is a informal conversation as part of your mentor meeting. When we talk about reporting back, we're not looking at a kind of formal presentation. Okay, so it's just about talking with your mentor about your learning over the few weeks. Okay, a reminder please about the module progress trackers and how they provide that at a glance picture of the key activities this half term. So you can see that already, now we're in week 3 of the programme, you should have engaged with your module audit through that first mentor meeting, and you're attending your session this week, which you're attending now online. And your next engagement will be that mentor meeting that we mentioned and the self-directed study, where you'll think about the kind of evidence you have based on that initial inquiry question that you've identified today. Please remember to submit all and finish. So on UCL Extend, when you do engage with your self-study or you do engage with your mentor meeting activities, please remember to show your engagement on UCL Extend. A reminder of the resources available to you. So in terms of your next steps, you may well have questions that we haven't answered today. ECTs, remember you're joining us in a couple of weeks' time, in week 6, for your sessions. Bring them along to those sessions. Talk to your mentors, talk to your induction tutors at school. One thing to flag up at this stage is ECTs, in terms of your timetable entitlement, you should now have that 5% allocation on your timetable, and that's to enable you to engage with all the activities that we've mentioned. So the self-study activities, your mentor meetings every other week, and those sessions that you'll attend each half term. So your mentor meetings this half term are in weeks 2, 5 and 7 on UCL Extend. But obviously if you have a different pattern within school and they fall on 3, 6 and 7, that's not a huge problem. Just remembering where they are can help you to find the materials on UCL Extend and remind you that you have that entitlement to mentoring every other week. If you haven't already engaged with the asynchronous conference material, please do, because that is a mark of your engagement in this programme, and it's also gives a really helpful overview of year 2, goes into a little bit more detail than I've been able to today. Really looking forward to seeing many of the mentors tomorrow or on Friday, I hope I saw some of you last week in the year 1 conference sessions. So we'll just allow a couple of minutes now for any questions people have, but thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to working with you on year 2, and I hope that it really supports you to thrive in the profession. Okay, thank you.